So far we've introduced this concept of cases, and cases are the form of the noun that tell us how to use the word in the sentence. And we've introduced two forms so far. We have the nominative case, which tells us that this is what the sentence is about, or who or what is doing the action of the sentence. It's what we call the subject. The accusative case, the accusative form of the noun, tells us what has the action of the sentence done to it. This is the form that often comes after our verb in our translation, and it normally tells us what the subject is doing to something. So, for example, the cat chases the mouse. Cat would be nominative, mouse would be accusative. Now we're going to introduce a new case, which is called the ablative case. The ablative case is used as a noun in some sort of prepositional phrase, and it's what we call the object or the noun of a preposition. So the nominative case, just as a recap, translates before the verb. For example, Antonius feeds the cat. Antonius would be nominative, acting as the subject. The accusative case translates in English after the verb. For example, Antonius feeds the cat in the kitchen. The cat would be accusative, coming after the verb. It's having the action of being fed done to it. Now the ablative case. We're going to translate the ablative case into English with a preposition. For example, Antonius feeds the cat in the kitchen. In indicates to me that this needs to be put into our new case called the ablative case. So let's look at what the ablative case looks like. It translates into English with a preposition. And often we associate the ablative case with these four words: by, with, in, or from. Now there's two ways to use the ablative case. First is to put the ablative form of the noun immediately after an actual preposition word. For example, sub arbore. We already learned that sub means under, and arbore is a form of tree. That's our new ablative form of tree. Now, instead of being redundant, I'm not going to say under, by, with, in, from a tree. Instead, what we do if there's a preposition right in front of it is we just replace the by, with, in, from with the word that's in front of it. So this would then mean under the tree. There's another way to use the ablative case when it's by itself and we assume the meaning of the word. There's no preposition actually placed in front of this word. It might look something like this: arbore. Notice how the sub here is missing. When the ablative case stands alone, this is when we give it that by, with, in, or from assumed translation. Now, good news is we're not going to be working with that one for a while. Right now, we're just going to see the ablative case after one of our actual preposition words. We'll get to how it's used by itself at a later date. So let's see what it looks like. In the first declension, words like puella or femina. These are the words that we learned end with an A. So on our new vocab list, all of these words are first declension words because they all end with the A and the AE for the plural. They're also all feminine nouns. So if we take a look at the chart, here's all the endings we have so far for these first declension nouns. When we want to express the noun as the subject or doing the action, we give the nominative endings like A and AE. When we want to show that the verb or the word is supposed to come after the verb, we give it the accusative endings like and as. Now, for this new ablative case, our designated endings are going to be A with a macron and is. These are the forms here that normally would be translated as by, with, in, from, but for our case now, we're going to be using it after certain prepositions. So let's just take a quick look at some of these to show how it's used in practice. Let's take a look at moon. Here are our first declension endings, and this is what moon would look like when we put the endings onto them. So luna lunae, as the subject, would look something like this. The moon is big. Sentence is about the moon. Accusative would look like this in context. Marcus sees the moon. The am tells me to put it after the verb, and that tells me that the sentence is doing the action to the moon. And finally, ablative. Here we see luna with the macron after the preposition in. And so this tells me that I'm going to translate it either as by, with, in, or from, or after certain prepositions. Okay, let's quickly look at some others just to show how this concept stays consistent. Let's look at sure. Same endings. We're going to put the endings on sure to reflect how it's used in the sentence. And the same situation applies. And one more. Now let's take a look at aqua. Water. Here's our forms, our endings, and this is what aqua would look like with the nominative, accusative, and ablative endings put on it. So we've got subject after the verb, after a preposition. Okay, so recall these are all of our first declension nouns. Here are the endings. The nominative works before the verb, accusative tells us to put it after the verb, and ablative tells us we're going to use it after certain prepositions or translate it as by, with, in, or from. So let's quickly go through the next declensions because the same rules apply, we just want to see new endings. Second declension nouns are the nouns that ended with us or sometimes are, like ekuus and wir. These nouns that we're going to see on our vocab list, ager, okeanos, and rivus, all fit into this pattern. If we take a look at their endings, these are the endings we are going to use for second declension nouns. We've already learned the nominative and the accusative, and now we're introducing the ablative. For the ablative, we use o with the macron, but also is again, just like in the first declension for plural. So what will this look like? Let's take a look at river. Here are our endings. Here we have what river would look like with all the endings put onto it. And again, these endings tell us how we're supposed to put the sentence together. So nominative makes it about that word. Accusative tells us to put it after the verb. And ablative tells us it's going to come after certain prepositions, or we want to translate it as by, with, in, from. Let's take a look with an R ending second declension noun, like ager. Here are the endings. Same endings apply. And so nominative, about it, accusative, after the verb, and ablative, after certain prepositions or by, with, in, from. Now we have some words, just a quick recap, like okeanos and ager. They're all going to follow these patterns, before, after, and after certain prepositions. However, there are some second declension nouns that are what we call the neuter words, like saxum, kylum. We learned previously that the nominative and accusative forms of these words are exactly the same. They both use and a for the subject and after the verb. Ablative is also going to use o and is. So for example, if we took a look at saxa, this neuter word, well, here it is as kylum. You're going to see how it's all put together with the and the a. So kylum after the verb and as a preposition. All right, and so just to quickly recap, words like templum, monstrum, these are also neuter words. These are the endings we are going to use to represent them before the verb, after the verb, after certain prepositions, or by, within, from. Okay, we have one declension left, third declension. The third declension are those words that don't really have a set nominative, like we've learned previously infans. Also, canis. These nouns are going to use this pattern, where we have a random nominative singular, es plural. Accusative goes to m and then es. And the ablative for these words will be the letter e or ibus for plural. So words like tree, mountain, sun, city. And also, as we've learned before too, rex would fit into this pattern. If we look at city, here's the endings for these third declension nouns. And this is what the word would look like with those endings put on it. So just to take a look at it in context, nominative, making it about that. Accusative, having it after the verb. And ablative after certain prepositions. Let's look at mountain. Same endings. Here's what it looks like with the endings put onto it. So nominative, about it. Accusative, coming after the verb. And then finally ablative, where we translate it as by, within, from, or after certain prepositions. That's where you'll see the E.